Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League show. And on this one, Peter and I are joined by Odoamne, who, at this point in time, he actually is just like a broadcast figure. I guess that's just what he does now. He's just the top analyst now in this side. Not weak siding, actually showing strength on the desk and being your own man and having your own opinion. So it must be nice. Must be nice for once, mate.
Yeah, my opinion actually matters now. It's no longer top lane where if you open your mouth, people tell you to shut up. The thing is, it does help that I'm speaking to mostly people who are, low elo. I mean, Peter was low elo, so sometimes you listen to me, sometimes not.
Okay.
Yeah, but it does help. It's nice. It is nice.
By the way, you have hinted at this a few times, but in theory, you're not 100% retired, right? If you had like an offer from a team that was an interesting project, you would potentially come back. It's still on the table, right?
I would say so. Even though I'm adapting to the broadcast life, I'm still putting the hours in league. I'm still grinding a lot. I'm still super high low. But yeah, I guess now with the ecosystem or the way it looks, I'm not really sure how spring or summer is going to look like. But I'm just kind of keeping my options open. But ultimately, I would still really love to play because I still enjoy the game a lot, and I still feel like I'm really good. It's just once you get the washed allegations, it's kind of hard to beat them, So
True.
You're kind of going against the Morrowind here. But that's my plan right now. Is just still grind the hell out of league and see what happens there.
I mean, all I'm going to say is if someone wants to start a team with just people from the desk, Jack Spectre or Odamne, it's not a bad lineup already. You've already got two pieces there that should be in LEC. They are in a way, they're on the desk.
Yeah, I mean, Jack is still playing, I think. I think he's still kind of in the same boat as me. He's super high-low. But from what I know, he really doesn't want to play competitive anymore.
Right.
Because I think he said that there's too many fraud rosters or something like that. So
he's not wrong.
I mean, I get the sentiment,
Yeah. And he's killing it on the desk, by the way. I think he's doing a really good job.
Yeah, he's been great on the desk. Good addition. I think he's doing more casting though. I have only had him as analyst with me maybe twice. But I think his main role is to cast.
Yeah. Right. Okay. On this show, we always let the guest go first. So, what is a good point? What based on this last week or so or the split? What is good at the moment? Odamne?
Ooh, what is good? I mean, Vladi for me, this guy is good. I was really, really hyped and excited for Vladi because even though. Because the thing is, the way it works, you when you do broadcast, you have these meetings weekly, where at the beginning of the split or as you go, you kind of designate, the hype people to talk about, kind of someone to build a narrative around. And Vladi was at the bottom of the food chain, right? Because you had Caliste, you had Canna, who the previous split was really, really good. And you had Yike, obviously, coming from G2, a lot of eyes on him. And Vladi was kind of the non-hype guy. But this guy has been grinding so incredibly hard, and towards the end of the split, the whole narrative, even in broadcast, was like, okay, guys, we kind of have to start hyping this guy up and talking about him because this guy is just so absolutely cracked. And honestly, when you think about it, Caps only lost finals to two mid laners, Larsen and Vladi now.
True.
In EU. It is the only two finals that he lost out of like 9, I think, or something like that. So for me, to have a guy or even a rookie, because he is technically a rookie, even though he had only like one split, I guess, or one summer split in the year before, to come in and play this good against the ultimate boss of the LEC in that sense. Not a lot of teams get to beat G2, and the way you beat them is you have to find someone who's just as good as Caps or even better. And it was really surprising looking at K-Corp and seeing him, do it. Not because I thought that he's bad in that sense, but it's just he kind of came and took the league by storm, with just not doing crazy stuff. It's not like he reinvented the wheel in that sense or anything. Just consistent, solid, good League of Legends, and it was just surprising to see this sort of comfort and stability and consistently good performance from him. I think he had only one bad game this split, if I think about it, and it was a playoffs game, so it was, it wasn't really a decisive game. I guess it was just one game in a best of that he cleaned up afterwards. But incredible level of consistency from him. So I was taken aback by it.
Yeah, I fully agree. And he's come out of nowhere, really, to be honest. Like, normally rookies have like this level of inconsistency, and he definitely had it in summer last split, but it's just gone, this split, which is very, very impressive. Also, obviously K Corp went hard on caps, like Tagmas was coming mid, Yike was coming mid. They were really stopping caps from being able to play. But you can't do that if your mid laner isn't controlling his waves properly, isn't like calling the right timers, isn't doing something with the lead he's getting afterwards. So yeah, it was a very, very impressive performance. Like I cannot remember a rookie, because I'm going to call him a rookie as well, because he hasn't even been in the league for a year. I cannot remember a rookie performance from a mid laner this impressive, right? And that's including people like Humanoid when they came up, Nemesis, Larson. Like it's just been impressive, and it's also in a fearless format, which in theory should hurt rookies, right? Because if you're a veteran, you've played formats in the past where you can just have your random Anivia or your, like Orianna isn't that I mean, it's a meta pick, right? But you don't have to put in as much time into Orianna if you've been playing for 10 years versus if you've been playing for a shorter amount of time, so you have time to do more things, more innovative picks. So yeah, so he hasn't been hurt by the fearless format. He's obviously doing really, really well in solo queue. Just very, very impressive for sure.
Yeah, I think this is actually, I like the angle you took, Odamne. It's like people, maybe because they're looking at Carmine Corp as a whole, and obviously Caliste was the super-hype person, or there's the whole, like, Yike used to be in G2. There's loads of, like, distracted angles, but I think the part people are missing is the whole thing, especially if you think about the early days of EU LCS was supposed to be the mid lane region. Like, not only do we have caps and perks in different eras when we have, like, the best, but to actually win from mid lane is super insane in the EU LCS. I used to have a thing that I used to do that had a double purpose. One, it was to fuck with them when he was on Fnatic, but it was also to make a point about how insane mid lane talent in the EU is, because what I used to say when on Fnatic was like always second was, if he wins, Nemesis will be the worst mid laner to win LEC. And what everyone was doing, that thing of like, oh, you saying he's bad? It's like, no, my joke there is like, the only people who'd won at that point in time was like Caps, Perks, Expeke, Froggen, and I think like Febiven or something. So like, it's a pretty insane fucking list. Like, my point there is, if I'm saying currently like Febiven's the worst, like he's still pretty good. The point, if you notice there, is even really great play. Nuke Dog never won one. It's actually really fucking insanely hard out of mid to win, because two regions won.
Actually, Alex never won LEC.
No, also never won one too.
Holy moly, yeah.
There's loads of people. It's actually like, people forget Nisqy only won that one time with Mad Lions, like 2 years ago when they fluked that one split. Like, it's really, Larson only got the one, even losing all those finals. So, like, the point, I would extend the point to this one of Vladi here. Like, in theory, you just don't win as a rookie, especially, bro. You don't just walk in the league and win the chop. Like, it's happened to Perks, right? He had, like, a whole fucking set of veterans around him. Febiven had, like, by the summer split, like, Yellow Stars, his shot caller. He had, like, Hooney and Rainover just ran the whole league. You remember what it was like back then? Like, these guys didn't really have to be, like, the number one guy on the team. They were, like, good in their role, etc. But, like, I also think that's the other thing that's crazy. It's technically 2 splits, boys. That's it. He hasn't even done, like, a whole year yet. He's already the champion. And it's not like he was inconsequential. I do think you can look at their team. It was overall very strong. He can complement most members. But, like, look how this guy played too. If you think about when people like Humanoid came in the league, I do think they, like, were a little bit more limited in their champion pool, and they just tried to play the matchups. They, like, this guy looks like he plays everything he plays in solo queue. He just plays wherever he wants. Like, by the end of the split, he's just picking literally anything he wants. Like, all the strongest meta picks, the Yone, everything looked dope. And also, like, I watched him play solo queue and rated him before. Like, he actually does play for real, like, with the same swagger when he just grinds as he does in the LEC. Like, he's got mad swag too. He's got, like, the fucking, he seems like he genuinely believes he should be, like, a top player. So I think it's dope, mate. And I even think one part that people will underestimate is because, like, a rookie won LEC and's going to the first stand. I thought Wadid was right on Twitter. If you look right now might be the number one time in league history where actually, like, being a mid lane farmer, it doesn't really even matter. Like, the game's not even about that for that fucking lane. So if anything, like, this is, by the way, the roles you want the rookies at are, like, they're just the hands roles, the ones where you just go to the tournament and just do some fucking, even people didn't like M&S are hands, mate. They could, like, out hands a fucking TES mid laner or something. So I actually think he might even do decently at the first stand. Everyone wants it to be like you're going to fail like everyone does when they choke and they've never been. Bro, in this meta, if he can pick these champions, what everyone else is playing, maybe he can even fuck around and, like, beat a fucking Asian team. Maybe it's possible. What do you think, Odo? You think he can do it?
I think so, especially because if you think of if you think about it, it wasn't really like he won LEC just because he showed up on the day, right? It's just consistent upwards trajectory in terms of growth, and he's doing really good. I don't really think his champion pool is special in any way. I think he's just playing normal meta stuff, but he kind of
plays
has this,
everything, though, mate. He plays it Aurora, everything. He has it all, yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of plays everything, but he has this sort of rookie confidence where I feel like when you're a rookie and you first come into the league, you play with a little bit more confidence than the veterans in that sense, because what happens is that the more time you spend in the league, the more you get molded by your coaching staff, by your org, the people around you. They kind of make you, a little bit more consistent and a little bit more risk adverse in that sense, because naturally they just want to minimize the amount of mistakes you do. And he's at this point where he doesn't really give a shit, or he didn't really get a lot of information, drilled in his head, where he has to, filter a lot of information that he has and choose the best course of action. So I feel like he is a breath of fresh air. And also going into first stand, I think it's one of those tournaments right now where there's only young mid laners. There you don't have. I think the average, or like the oldest mid laner at the tournament is like 23 or 24.
Oh,
I
wow,
think.
right, okay.
Yeah, so you don't have any of the old guard. You don't have, like Doindy, Faker, all of the old super veterans and stuff to kind of, beat you up or, contest with you. Right now it's just rookie playground at first stand, So it's kind of, he gets to go toe to toe. And I just think that K Corp as a whole, their team play is solid. Sure, I still think they have flaws in their game in their gameplay. They could be exploited. We saw it with Fnatic a little bit. The fact that they dropped 2 games because of some identity things that they were doing wrong. But I do think that he will contend. I don't see other people having. I just don't see a clear flaw in his gameplay in his gameplay where I'm like, oh, maybe his roaming is bad or his laning phase is bad. He can get exploited, right? Because you could have Doinby, who just picks Nautilus, pushes and moves, and then all of a sudden you don't get to lane, right? It's just, if he has to adapt, he will. But it's also like international experience right now. How are you going to perform under stress? Because it's a lot more than playing finals in the little LEC studio with 200 people, where it's the same environment that you've known for a while, or at least you've seen it before. And also, you don't really get to scrim other teams.
True.
In that sense, because right now he's playing against people he played before. So right now there's a little bit more of an unknown factor, where the question is, how is he going to perform against people he never played against before, where maybe he didn't get to study or get some muscle memory and exploit, or like notice tendencies that people do when they lane against him, because that's also some sort of comfort that he doesn't have access to. So for me, my big question is that. But at the same time, I still feel that he's ready to go, because I don't know, he's just been good for a year now, and his growth doesn't stop so far.
Yep, I agree. Also, he's also been leading from the front on this team, right? Like Canna is the biggest veteran on that team, right? But he's not micromanaging everyone on the team, right? Like his English is not bad, but it's not like good enough to do that. Also, there's one thing. If there's one thing I would say about Vladi, I have one minor concern, which is I don't think he has a good answer into Yone. Because he picked Corki into Yone against Fnatic. He picked Jace into Yone the first time against G2. And I feel that K-Corp basically need to find something into this. Because Cream and Zeka will will really, really like win games on that. I guess kind of, Odo, there's one question I would want to just ask you on the Vladi point, which is, we don't give split awards, or the broadcast doesn't give split awards. But if there was an MVP of the split, would you have Vladi as the MVP, or would you have Yike as the MVP, or somebody else?
I think they do give. I think it might just be one of those yearly awards where they do the Rookie of the Year, MVP of the Year, stuff like that. But I'm not sure. But if I had to choose something for this split, it's hard because Yike did a lot, right? It would surely be for me between Yike and Yike and Vladi in that sense. I mean, SkewMond had a great year as well, or like split so far with G2, and I think they just fumbled the final. So it might just be a little bit, hype narrative results based analysis where I say, oh yeah, Yike should be getting MVP. But for me, what I thought for the whole year, or like for the fall split, it should have been SkewMond for MVP. If you take away the final, I just felt like this guy ramped up super hard. And just seeing voice comms and everything, he leads the team very, very well. I thought it was very fair that Vladi got finals MVP.
Yep.
But I just think split long MVP, I still would have given it to SkewMond, and then maybe it would have been Vladi just because he was good the whole split. But I think it's hard. The thing is, it's hard to take the MVP away from the jungler. It's always like this in League, where jungler is just the most OP role, and you get to see a team live or die by their jungler so many times that it's hard to see the impact of a really good millionaire, right? So that's why I'm like, I would have probably given it to SkewMond.
Okay, spoken like a true top laner there. Right, go on then, Peter. What's your good point?
Yeah.
My good point is since we're glazing K-Corp, I'm going to continue to glaze K-Corp, which is I kind of want to say that the way that this team has been constructed is really good. I mean, if you look at the players on this team, obviously Caliste is like the hype guy, but in fairness to K-Corp, they found him before anyone else when he was I think when he was 15 or 16 or whatever, they signed him to like their third, I don't know what it's called. It's not K-Corp Blue, it's K-Corp, the other one, the one below, like they have the juniors or whatever. I don't know what it's called. But so obviously they had Caliste, which they brought up through the system. They have Vladi, who they brought up through the system. But you look at the veterans that they have on the team, which are Canna, Yike, and Tagamas, and all of these guys have been like rejected by other teams. Canna couldn't find a team. Yike was obviously dropped by G2, and Tagamas, like, I wouldn't say I'm a Targamas hater. Like I'm a 113 hater, right? But I'm not a Targamas hater. I just don't think you should build your team around him. But they found a way to make it work, and they found a way to put the pieces together and get the most out of these players that other teams just didn't value or didn't rate or didn't have didn't pursue aggressively. And I think that deserves a lot of kudos. Like, it would have been so easy. Like, imagine this split goes badly, they come sixth, and how much flame the coaches and the GM are going to get for backing Tugmas. You'd have,
Sure.
we'll talk about Vitality, I think, later. But imagine the calls that you're going to have now for this guy's head to be axed. But instead, he plays well. I don't think he was a top 3 support in regular season, but in playoffs, like a lot of the supports who were ahead of him, people like Alvaro, Mickey to an extent too, actually, kind of dropped off a bit in playoffs, and he just maintained constant. He was probably second best support over the course of the whole split, maybe best if you value playoff games higher. And this org is backing a guy that basically the community thinks is really garbage, and I think that deserves credit, because we're going to flame them if the decision goes wrong, right? Yeah. So give them credit when it goes right.
What do you think?
I agree because he went from end of last year to being the most publicly hated player. Everyone was calling for his execution, saying that he's so bad, he's a mute, he doesn't speak and anything. But for me, this guy had massive glow up in Winter right now. It was insane to see, because I played with him and I knew the way he communicates and stuff, and I knew how difficult it can get at times, just because he doesn't really have a loud voice, or if he was empowered to have a loud voice in Excel. But now you see all of these snippets from the voice comms, and he's talking like, shattering the narrative, the so-called narrative that he doesn't speak, because he's still a very quiet guy, but he just feels empowered to talk a lot. And I think, as Peter said, I feel like he ramped up, or he became top 2, top 3 in playoffs. I still think that I wouldn't really put him again top 3. I thought he was good. But I think that the way they constructed the roster was also interesting, because of all of the reasons that Peter said. I also think I don't really think they fluked their way into a win. I think they have great coaching staff, and they obviously did all of the things that they need to progress. But when you made the roster, you don't really see them winning LEC so quickly, especially in Winter, because they need time to gel together, right? But for me, what was the most interesting point was that everyone was seeing Caliste as, you know, the hero that's gonna come and save K Corp. But for me, Caliste in that final was the worst player on the team, which is insanity, you know. It's not to say that he played really bad, right? But it's just when everyone else on their team was so good, the fact that your so-called you know, hero is getting carried just speaks to how insanely good the environment is, or the coaching staff is, to enable and empower everyone separately to, you know, be able to have pop-off games like that.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I also agree. Like I hinted at it earlier, I actually think it's quite shrewd the way they've sort of designed almost the load-bearing parts of this team. Because if you think about it, one of the big complaints I always have, it's funny enough, we can maybe talk about this later with G2, is if you're going to gamble on positions with rookies, I get really nervous when you put like jungler and support as the rookie player that's never played in LEC, especially if you want like G2 to be the champion or go international, etc. Because that's always the position where like, is that guy even going to hold up? Like, he could just fucking, mental could just go boom when he goes behind 2 quadrants at the beginning of a game or something. So I actually think if you look at this squad, right, people forget this. There's a piece of trivia I always tell people about Yike, which is he's something like a year younger than, or the same age as Caps. People just don't know it. Like in their brain, because he's only been in LEC a couple of years, it doesn't make sense, right? He is though, like, because Caps came in when he was like 17. This guy came in when he was like 23 or something mental, mate. So he's actually like an older guy. Now he's also, by the way, even though he has like 2 years LEC, he has 2 years LEC. We're in the finals every time. You go to every international tournament. Like for me, Yike actually has like jumped from like rookie to like, he's a veteran at this point in time. Like that's a player who definitely knows his whole vision, how he wants to play his role, how he's going to play with different teammates. Canna has just proven to be a mega veteran top laner. My good point is going to be about him in a minute, so I won't go too far on that one. But I'll just put it this way, right? If you think about the way the league went, this split, you wouldn't have thought it was that essential to have a super good top laner. Everyone's flamed top laner in Europe for years. Bro, this split was the split where everyone was saying, like, Oscarin's had a glow up and Broken Blade is the best player on G2. Like, if you didn't have Canna, you probably don't win this finals, mate. You probably come second or third in this tournament, and then that would actually have been a fact, and all would think it would be, but this guy held up awesome. And then last like I say, if you look at the like rookie positions, it was mid and AD. It was the positions that just hopefully just use your hands, use your youthful exuberance, and people sort of shield you around the game. Even the Targama's pickup was very shrewd, because think about it, he's already played with Caliste previously in the LFL. By the way, if you look at the coaching staff, the Rhea guy was both of their coach back in the LFL. Then the Apples coach, the assistant coach now, was also with Caliste and Vladi previously when they were in the B team as well. So like, if you actually go and look, like, this is what's funny, Peter, is in a weird way, I was thinking I could throw this to you on this. If you always say that you want with rookies, you have to give them like 2 years. Well, essentially the coaching staff actually already had time with these rookies, but they're not starting from day one in LEC. That's got to actually be an advantage to some degree. You already know these people before you get into the shit, as it were, right?
Yeah, I fully agree. And actually, I think this is one of the reasons why having an ERL team or academy team is so important, because you get to skip the first year, right? But I would say that what I've seen from these rookies is really, because obviously, like, this is a very similar strategy to what EG did back in the day, right, with Danny and Jojo.
Yes.
But they have Canna and Yike instead of Inspired and Impact, right? It's completely different, right? Like, it's Canna is, his English isn't as good as Impact, and Yike is less experienced than Inspired, right? So it's they've put them in even more of a leadership role, right? Like, you're not going to have, you know, if Jojo doesn't know what to drop call, Impact's always going to rescue him, but Canna isn't going to rescue Vladi if he doesn't know what to do in the mid game. And like, this is, so to me, it's even more impressive. And yeah, I mean, like, the way that they've done it has been smart. The way that they've resisted community input has been smart. And yeah, like, let's see what they do at first stand. You know, Zeka and Cream are both very, very good melee players. So we're gonna see some banger games with, and let's see what Vladi's got, right? So looking forward to it.
By the way, like I said, my good point was about Canna anyway, so let's just pivot into that and talk about it. So actually, I'll make it brief, Odo, because I want to get your take as a top laner. Like, first of all, I actually did say when he joined this team last year, like, there's no way this guy's going to be bad. Like, if you ever saw him in Korea, he just wasn't, like, winning the World Championship with D plus a T1. He was still a good player. Like, he could do, like, fucking solo games or have, like, a carry game on Renekton or something. Like, he was an actual Korean player. But I have to say, like I say, when you look back now on the fact they win the split, he's, like, one of the revelations of the LEC. Like, I think think by the end, most people agreed he was one of the best in his role, actually. Like, he did a really good job. And because people would think, well, is he speaking English? What's the shot caller going to be like? I actually think that's one area as to why we haven't imported, like, solo learners, especially super duper from Korea. People are scared that they won't be able to interact with the team. They'll have, like, Alfari syndrome or something. So what have you thought of this guy, Odo? What would you say on Canna?
Yeah. I thought even from before when he came in, I thought he was going to be flippy in that sense, because the thing about Korean tops is that I think this is the most they have a type. Every time I play against the Korean top is the same type. Winning matchups, they're absolute gods on them, but losing matchups, they lose like no one else. They will get stomped into the ground because they will still play like they can win the matchup, right? But they can't, because mathematically some matchups you just can't win, because that's how the numbers go, right? So every time I see Canna, or I saw Canna in LEC having one of those good matchups or those range matchups that he has a meta and he plays them well, this guy just stomping, right? He's doing really good. He looks like arguably maybe the best top in LEC, or, you know, gives BB a run for his money on every single day based on the matchup. But when he has matchups where they go 50-50 or they're slightly losing, I feel like he's really invisible in that sense. And you could see it this year, or in Winter Split already. Week 1, Week 2, I think, it was Jace meta. He was literally pounding everyone's head in. It looked like an absolute beast. Week 3, Week 4, Jace gets nerfed. Starts playing more of these 50-50 champions, you know, Cassante, these more team-oriented champions. He becomes slightly invisible, right? You don't see the impact of how good he is on top lane, or the fact that he's bullying you in lane and all of this stuff. And even in playoffs, they play Fnatic. They went 3-2 against Fnatic, but his impact, he is quite invisible in that series. He doesn't really do anything. And then you go in the finals, and then even Apple says in an interview, literally during the series, is like, oh, we stop playing these champions that are good for the meta, and we just let them play champions that are bad for the meta, but they're good matchups for him. Right. Because he has a lot more impact. So that's the thing with him, is that when he has good matchups or winning matchups or champions that have leverage in the game, he's going to do a lot. But
I mean, Smurfing on the Gnar at the end, mate, that was fucking sick.
Yeah, but that's also, he had a good matchup. Gnar into Urgot is an easy matchup. Right, you know, all you have to do is dodge level 3 or like the first 3 levels, and after that, you're cruising. You know, because it's just, the matchup is just super OP. And that's the thing with him. When he has these matchups or when he's enabled, he looks like the best top laner in EU. But my criticism of him is when he has 50-50 matchups, he can't really find the same ways to impact, right? And it's not really about, yeah, sure, when you're losing or when you're 50-50, it's a lot harder to find winning plays. It's just a style difference in how you approach the game when you play these 50-50 matchups, and how you have to approach situations where you can create plays that I feel like is not really super developed in that sense. And I noticed this against most of the Korean tops that I played against, is that they have the same thing. Is when their matchup is good, they beat the shit out of you, but their matchup is bad, they're quite invisible in that sense. So now the thing is, if you give him good matchups all the time, is he going to be the GOAT, or he's going to be the best? Yeah, probably. But at some point you're gonna run out of good matchups, right? So that's what I feel about him. But I still feel like, you know, when I play against them personally, it feels hard just because, you know, he knows how to win and he's good. He's a good player. But in the 50-50 matchups, it doesn't really feel that hard in that sense.
Yep. Or in the losing matchups too. Like when he was on, he had a really rough Sion game. I remember. When was that? That was just give me a sec. Oh, that was the G2. That was in the G2, the first G2 series. I remember he had a rough Sion game. But I think I agree with your point, but I don't think the other teams in the LEC recognize this. Because definitely, if I was trying to fight KC, the way I would fight KC is either camp bot or try to have a winning matchup top or neutral matchup, like you said. And the way Fnatic approached it in their series was not that. I don't know if that's what you're going to talk about later, but yeah, it looked like they didn't know how to properly deal with this guy in draft. And yeah, that's what I would say about that.
It's also right now, it's just blue side, red side. On blue side, it's so hard. There's no longer winning. So the problem is that blue side, there's no longer blind pick winning top laners in the game. And that's why in week 1, week 2, he was just playing Jace because it was the best top laner in the game. You just pick him, you go grasp, and you're just stomping everyone, and there's no counter pick to him. But right now, is on blue side, you're kind of stuck in a position where you will have to play this 50-50 matchup just because there's no good way to ensure that you have a winning top lane or a stomping top lane from draft anymore, because there's no premier blind picks in the game right now on top lane. You're probably going to have to, well, now the lane swaps are gone, maybe you can cook something a little bit more on how to, you know, find a winning top, especially when you go deeper down fearless route, cook a little bit with your bans and stuff, and maybe a top laner becomes OP and you can first pick him. But it is going to be a little bit tougher. So that's the thing. When K-Corp was winning and they were doing really, really well, or when in the finals, they had 2 red side games where he got counter pick in both. And even on their blue side game, in game 3, they had, given how fearless went and the bans they put, they made Gnar counter every single melee champion in the game. And then BB tries to pick Urgot because it's probably, you know, on LoL Analytics is the only winning matchup against Gnar or something like that. But the draft looked like shit. So they did something clever there where they're like, okay, your draft really needs a tank, but we're going to pick Gnar. So now if you pick a tank, Canna's going to smurf. But if you don't pick a tank, then your draft is shit in that sense.
Well, you know what? The thing about drafting Odoamne is it can be really confusing and it's really time consuming because you have to plan out all the possible variations. And it's not just about picking good ingredients. You also have to pick things that complement each other and go together well and come online, as it were, at the appropriate point in the game. That's why, much like with cooking, wouldn't it be great if when it came to cooking, you didn't have to get all those ingredients and how spices work and what goes with what and blends? What if you could just, like a draft, get a pre-made, already world-class draft, like one of those Misfits ones that Hiva used to do, where you got you that beautiful tank in the top lane, then you had Vethio on the carry champion, you had Mercer on that Yumi, and then you just have that front-to-back team fighter for Neon, wouldn't you? And it was just easy-beasy, 1, 2, 3, you win a team fight, off into the playoffs, no problem, right? So that's what Factor meals are like. Basically, they already have world-class nutritionists and people designing these meals for you. They're never frozen. They come like chilled, basically. You put them in your fridge. So unlike actually things that you take out that are the microwave meals, it doesn't destroy all the flavor profile and make it like, it just looks like it should taste like food, but it doesn't. It actually tastes pretty good. I've had these before. And also you can get all different like pre-designed plans. Like they have a keto one if you do like working out and stuff. They have a protein plus one if you want to build muscle. They have like, what do you call it? Calorie smart if you want it to just be reduced amount of calories in there. They also have loads of add-ons, things that you can add to your team, much like you could add a real coaching staff Fnatic if you ever wanted to win an LEC title. You could already add wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go items. And also, I've actually tried these before myself. If you're someone, by the way, who's a gamer or a streamer or in any way works in esports, it's also super easy because who wants to do like 25 minutes of cooking something and have all the ingredients portioned out? Why not just pop this in and have it in 2 minutes? That's about the time it takes to get into the draft nowadays before everyone just quits it and then just you have to redo it again because some moron didn't want to play that particular champion in jungle and then they said they would feed. But you will get fed here by Factor Meals. So eat smart with Factor. Get started with factormeals.com/Factor Podcast. It's on the screen there. Use the code Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's Factor Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thank you to them, and thank you to anyone who purchases that and everyone who just listened to that thing I said that was loosely related to League of Legends at the beginning. Sort of segued it in, didn't I? Not fashionable segues anymore in real life or ads. Yeah.
You got me in the first half there.
Okay.
Honest,
You wondering where that was going.
It took me a little bit to realize that this is actually going to be an ad plug, you know.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
On the topic of drafts, that are very cooked and with nutritionists and stuff. That's why I'm a little bit concerned for K-Corp at first stand, and I hope they're going to prove me wrong and they're going to do amazingly well. But I felt like their win against G2 was a little bit fraudulent, not in the sense that they played bad or they didn't draft bad. It's just that the enemy broke their face, I felt like. And it wasn't really, this super hype final, both teams are playing the best League of Legends they ever played. This K-Corp showed up on the day and did amazingly well, but G2 didn't in that sense. And it came from draft a lot. So
go for it.
I do wonder how K-Corp is going to adapt because, again, in game 3-4 against Fnatic, I felt like this team is do or die a little bit by Targamas playing engaged supports or these sort of melee champions because every time he doesn't play that, it feels like everything is going to shit. Not just because, he's playing it bad in that sense, but it feels like what Yike and Targamas want to do together only works right now or in their current iteration of their style on him having melee support. So they did that against G2 in the finals, right? But G2 just had atrocious drafts 3 games in a row, in my opinion, there.
What do you think, Peter?
I'm just having a quick reminder over what.
I mean, I will say, if you remember, the narrative was going to be the opposite. Everyone said from the upper bracket final it was like the greatest draft difference ever, and Dylan Falco's going to destroy them all, and they've shown everything against Fnatic. So I actually think most people expected the opposite and thought Garmin Corp would run out of champions or something.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say in the upper bracket, they picked a lot of bot lane matchups, which you can get away with at ERL level, but you can't get away with at LEC level, like Senna Yasuo and things like this, right? Like you can pick that into literally anything, but you can't. And I will say, in that sense, KC adapted well. My main thought for the finals actually wasn't so much from the G2 side, wasn't so much about draft. It was more about like Labrov just, how should I say, pushing his limits a lot, more than maybe he should have in some of these drafts. But I mean, just quickly skimming through. Yeah. Oh. Ooh, yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. To be honest, I didn't come at it from the G2 perspective, but from the G2 draft perspective. But now I look at these drafts. Holy moly, you're right. Like first game, they go on Orianna 4-5, like so they have no priority early. Second game, they give Skarner Yone on to red side, and then game 3 is Rice. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. So K-Corp did their homework, right? They adapted well, but I wanted to see their adaptation and how good they do with the fixes, right? Where you don't play the funny bot laners, you don't play what did they have? Lulu, Alistar, Senna, Seraphine. They went from that into 3 tanky boys with Rel, Alistar, Rakan, and I'm like, okay, this is great. You're on the right path. But you just won finals against someone that didn't even test you in that sense, because these people, because they just broke their face, right? So that's why I'm a little bit scared at first hand of how it's gonna look, because the thing is, when you get this live experience of someone trying to outplay you in draft and making you adapt in the middle of the series, it makes you grow and it makes you a lot better. But the fact that, I mean, we saw it, right? From the first series from G2 to the second one, they did huge adaptations and they won, but G2 regressed in that sense. So that's why I'm thinking a little bit, how is K-Corp going to do? I still think they're going to do well, but they missed a little bit of valuable experience if that would have happened if G2, didn't break their faces like that.
Why do you think Rise has been so popular in EU? So obviously I know Rise has been winning in Korea. No, sorry, in China. In Korea it's kind of like 50-50, but basically DOMB is winning on Rise, which kind of doesn't count. And then a lot of the other top teams like Anyone's Legends and JDG both pick Rise, and like they're obviously top teams, right? So they kind of outskill. So the Rise doesn't matter. But in EU, did it even win anything? Like I remember JoJo
lost twice.
Yeah. Like JoJo lost, Caps lost.
JoJo didn't play. Oh, JoJo played Rise. So it was K-Corp. So Vladi lost with Rise in game 4 of upper bracket versus G2. Then JoJo lost game 4. And now Caps lost game 3. So for me, when I think of mid laners, it just feels like maybe once you go down the prior hole, you need. Oh, sorry, your prior hole, as in the champions, the priority list. You need champions that actually get priority in game, and then Rise probably gets slotted into that slot where he's probably the next best champion that can give you priority and skirmish power, and also I guess it's just point and click CC, which is great. I just think that it didn't win because it was drafted poorly in that sense. When you look at K-Corp, what they had Rise, Viego, Seraphine. Well, you can go next already with that because you just have no power in that sense. MKOI, they had Camille, Rise, Sivir, Lulu, Amumu, which is decent, but it feels like you're playing a comp from like season 7 or 8.
No.
So something feels off in all of them, right? And then the biggest crime, G2, you have Urgot, Rise, Thresh. And no matter what millionaire you play there, I think you will lose. So I don't really think it's a Rise problem. It just feels like their champions are not getting picked, or this champion's not getting picked when he needs to. And I also feel like a lot of the EU teams, they don't know how to draft because they approach drafting from the perspective of this champion is OP, we have to pick it.
Right.
And then they will pick it because it's the most OP champion in the game. But then how the draft structure was, like they end up with pieces that don't work with the most OP champion in the game. So, for example, when you pick Ryze, you technically want, a beefier front line, something that keeps teamfights a little bit more static, so he can create space by himself, and play side lane a little bit. But instead, you get the most explosive team draft ever with Urgot, Ryze, Thresh, and all of a sudden, the Ryze can't do anything because his champion is just bad with the other champions in the draft. So I feel like that's a thing that EU teams really lack, is this sort of vision when it comes to drafting types of champions instead of the actual OP champions, where you can identify, okay, how does a good draft look like? For example, in game 4, let's say you want, a champion that makes space, you want a tank, and you want 2 engaged champions. And you look at that and then you slot in your champions. No, they just kind of do it reverse, where they overforce the champion in a specific draft, and then the draft falls apart because as you go down the draft list, the champions that would slot in are either not available anymore or the enemy picked them. So all of a sudden, the composition of your draft doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Even though you have OP champions, the OP champions don't work together just because you're missing key components for your draft.
I think also people have stopped respecting the counters, because back in the day you didn't pick Ryze because you had to worry about Syndra. I think Ryze was one thing, but Lulu was another one of these champions where people just blind picking Lulu into Blitzcranks or blind picking Lulus into Karmas. Like you just can't play with those. I mean, sure, Lulu is an OP pick, like its win rate is mega high, but not into Blitzcrank and Karma. Same with Ryze. Like you can pick Ryze, but there are counters into it. I mean, not everyone can play Anivia, but pretty much every mid lane right now can play Syndra. So, like, it's it's weird. I also think that maybe people were focusing a bit on the OPs and not enough on the champions, the teams that they're playing against. Like one of the things which frustrated me the most about draft in this entire playoffs was game 5, where they blind picked Camille for Oscarinin into Renekton.
Oh,
I mean, like five pick red Renekton. Like,
I'm like, bro, that's a champion. That's a matchup that has been bad for 10 years now, and it didn't get better at any point in time, and they still go for it. I mean, kudos to Oscar, right? He was equal CS at minute 10, but he was down like 4 plates. So even if you're even CS, it's just, I don't know. Fearless is just exposing people, I guess, or just makes people lose their minds in that sense, because all this prep that you have with always these champions, OP, this champion is OP, and all the structures that you have goes out the window because you get exposed because you don't understand why exactly, deep down those team compositions work is because of the types of champions that you're playing, and you don't see it like that, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's even worse because, sorry, last one. It's even worse because it's Canna, right? Like, I mean, like, sure, I think in that draft that there was nothing, like Renekton was always going to win early game against pretty much everything, but sure, maybe there's some things you can outscale with, but you don't care if Canna's playing to outscale you, right? You care if he's on the lane bully, and you give him like the best lane bully matchup you can possibly imagine. So yeah, I agree with you. The draft has been a bit sus on the final weekend, for sure.
By the way, I'll just tag on actually on this point, which is if you actually saw when Remain did his classic thing, which to be fair, he still does even when they lose, where he reveals what the scrim results were, etc. If you look, it's actually nightmare fuel, because if you see, when they'd played KC previously, actually G2 had beaten them, but it was Fnatic that was beating them in scrims. So I also wonder actually how much like they split the time for what the finals could be when they didn't know, is it going to be Fnatic, is it going to be Carmine Corp? Because it actually looked to me like Fnatic was the team maybe they thought had potential to beat them. All I'll say is my people in Fnatic thought that like if we can get there, we maybe can even do something. Obviously they didn't get there. So what I would say is this: if you look at this finals draft, right, if you look at the first 2 games from G2, those look totally like comps G2 would play. That's totally fine. Like, game 3 just looks like you're just out of options. There's nothing left. Like, how does that composition come together in game 3 as like the actual one to like win the game? I mean, you're losing everywhere, I guess, but like what's even the logic of this comp?
For me, game 1 was fine. Even though Peter says that they don't have priors, sure, you can still play without priors. For me, game 2 was already a little bit weird because you're picking Blitzcrank randomly and the enemy has Alistar, so you're going to hook the Alistar and he's just going to combo your whole team. So for me, game 2 draft doesn't make sense because, so you have Tristana, Corki, Cassante, Zyra. You have 4 champions that want to kite back and just kind of hold formation and move backwards slowly as you walk into them. And then you have Blitzcrank who wants to randomly explode the fight out of nowhere, right? So all of a sudden there's a little bit of anti-synergy there, and that's why I hated the draft, because Blitzcrank provides nothing, and all of a sudden the team identity split in two, where they're not really sure how they want to play. But game three was for me the biggest tragedy I've ever seen, because, man, I don't know.
They also
I
just got
don't know
destroyed in this game as well. They were just getting completely wrecked. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where the trace spawned from. The Urgot, I understand why it spawns out of desperation for the fact that you need Ryze and Pantheon to have someone to make plays with. Because what happens is that you pick you picked Caitlyn, and then you pick the Thresh. But then all of a sudden, enemy bot lane picks Jhin, which is not great in the meta, but it's a neutralizer for Caitlyn. So all of a sudden, G2 is like, well, we can't make plays bot anymore because there's no playmaking there because the Jhin is actually going to be winning against Caitlyn. So now we need to look top. But now the top has Gnar, and you're like, shit, well, most of our champions now can't counter Gnar because we need the tank as well because our comp is shit. So let's go in the middle and pick Urgot because at least we can kill the Gnar. And they did kill him one time, but then the Urgot became useless. So now it feels like it's just draft out of desperation. And I don't understand why. It feels like they're trying to reinvent the wheel so much because their drafts the week before they played them, they were good. They were a solid identity in all of the drafts. Everything made sense. The team comp was doing just one thing together. But now you went into finals weekend, and your team comp is just doing 2 things, 3 things at the same time for no reason, just from one week to another. So that's why I'm super mad or tilted at G2, because I'm like, innovativeness got you this far, but you don't need to keep reinventing the wheel when it works, right? Because now the question I have is, do you even know why you're reinventing the wheel, right? Do you? Because they did it so many times so good, but when I think of G2, every time G2 fumbles a win like this, is because they try to reinvent the wheel. Every single time I think in recent history when G2 loses a series they shouldn't lose is because they just grieve the draft. And from like an identity point of view, and I don't understand why they feel the need, because I understand that you need to push the boundaries all the time to keep staying at the top, and they did this for so long. But for me, this was such an obvious grief in that sense, and even in comms, because they did like mic check for finals, and I saw it, and it seemed like they were quite happy with the draft. So for me, it was a little bit bizarre. Because I think most of the people from the outside perspective, at least with Game 3 draft, it looks like a huge mismatch where you don't really have a lot of win conditions for a game of League of Legends in like Season 15. Because this draft would be good in maybe Season 8, 9, where it was side lane game.
True.
And you could do a lot, and you would have a lot more win conditions, and you'd be more comfortable. But right now, it's just Drake stacking, fighting for Atakan, fighting for neutrals. All you need is good position for neutrals and a comp that spikes at neutrals. But this one doesn't, so that's why I'm a little bit confused and sad, honestly.
Well, this leads in, Peter. What do you want to do for your point then? Because I think it leads in your point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about Lavrov. I mean, basically, Lavrov was really, really rough. But actually, I think we kind of covered G2. I sided you because I had 2 things I want to talk about that were negative, and I think we've been a bit over positive on KC and a bit negative on G2. So I'm going to talk about my second, like my minor negative point, which is that what on earth was going on in KOI, in the Fnatic KOI series? Like, I have never seen something as absurd as what happened at the end of game 1 of the KOI series, where they're literally running down, they're saying "lol chokers," and then they
It was amazing, wasn't it?
It's absolutely hilarious. And the sad thing is,
Peter, what didn't this happen to us in Splice?
Yes.
Where Vitality, we're playing against Vitality in regular season, and they say open.
Yep.
And someone believes it.
Yeah,
and then the game goes 55 minutes, and we end up winning, but everyone is super tilted or something.
No, I think that was Unicorns. It was against Unicorns of Love. I think it was like 65. Right. Yeah, I remember that game. It was like there was a Tom Kench in the game, and then like Nisqy accidentally like support. Yeah, I remember that. Holy moly, it's one of the.
It's just all chat always going wrong. all chat always goes wrong.
For me, like this playoff series was like, I felt KOI could have won the first 3 games. So for people that don't remember the series, basically the first game was really, really back and forth. But Koi like aced them, could have just taken Baron and like denied Soul and been in a really, really good position with their Yone Maokai comp, with a Mega Fed Cassante and things like this. They go to try to end the game, fail to end the game, tilt. Game 2, like you could still clearly see that some of the players are still tilted from how the game 1 ended, because in that game I think they had like a Jinx that was 3-0 or 4-0 in that game.
Minute 3 or something.
Yeah, exactly. So the game is over, right? Like, I mean, it's not free, but it's because enemy team has a Gwen, but it's like Gwen is going to take a long time to scale up, and your Jinx should just be able to go around. You just play 3 people around Jinx, and you just take all their tasks, right? So then they fail to execute that. They have a ridiculous game. Like, frankly, I think that their game 3 draft is kind of bad. Like, their game 3 draft is Sion, Jarvan, Ahri, Caliste, Braum, right? Like, if you don't win this game in 15 minutes, you lose the game, right? But they win the game in 15 minutes. It looks like a massive stomp. And then you think, okay, we go into game 4. They're back in the series, and then they go and pick Ryze, and they get countered by Syndra, and it's horrible. But to me, I feel Koi just like shot them. Like, they're not even shooting themselves in the foot. They're like. Actually, I shouldn't make this kind of joke. Is that too edgy? Is the joke that I'm about to make too edgy? They're shooting themselves somewhere else.
In the dick.
And
I imagine it's the premise, right? Okay.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because obviously, like, I want Koi to do well. I mean, I kind of because I feel I always have this like soft spot for people who I feel that are getting flamed for unfairly, and I feel JoJo's getting flamed a little bit unfairly. He is running it down a bit too. But this series was rough, and frankly, I thought Alvaro was at worst top 2 support in regular season. Like he was carrying, like, so much of Koi's game plan was get Alvaro on the map, get him to play with Illuria, get them to play into JoJo's lane so that JoJo is safe when people are targeting him in the mid game or when he's flipping everything in the mid lane in the early game. And in playoffs, he was just he was at worst inconsistent, at best at best inconsistent, at worst like having really, really rough games. And for Alvaro, he's the guy who is normally the most consistent on this team. But actually, Merwin, I think, was the most consistent on this team over the course of playoffs. And it's frustrating because you can see that they're almost there, but it's not clear whether they understand how to get over the hump that they've got, because they keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right? So is it a case of this team has reached as far as they're going to go, and they're never going to get there, or are there mistakes which are so obvious for like an outsider to see, something that they can fix? Because there were so many times in this playoffs that they really, really, like, you just had to question what they are doing, and it's frustrating because these are players that I know better, right? Like, there's some players in the league I don't think know any better, but the players on Koi I do think know better. It's just I don't know if it's stress, I don't know if it's communication, I don't know if it's like panic, but it wasn't there, right? And that was sad to see, I would say.
What do you think, Odo?
Yeah, MKOI is a bit bizarre for me because I think everything that Peter said was valid. I'm not sure if Merwin was the most consistent because I do think he had a little bit of sus games in playoffs. But for me, MKOI is one of these cases where the team does good, but I'm not 100% sure that they know why they're doing good. Because every time I look at MKOI, all their best games are when you have Alvaro and Elioya holding hands together for the whole game, and they have a combo that when people face check them, or when they find someone, they can actually do something. But what ended up happening was that I felt like going into playoffs, a lot of these games, there was a little bit of anti-synergy going on between the two. Against K-Corp, when they played and they got 2-0'd, their combo was Vi Braum, and in game 2 was Rakan Lee Sin. If you find someone, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to kill anyone. You can't stop people from walking in because it's a little bit of anti-synergy. Later, or like earlier in the season, they would have, they have like Nautilus Zyra, stuff like this, where, you have a kill combo in that sense. So when they played against BDS the week before, they had Zyra Rel, super OP, and then Sejuani Nautilus, okay, sure, you're not going to kill someone, but you can see someone for 10 seconds, and then anyone from your team is going to follow up and do something. So the thing is, as the playoffs went on, they stopped drafting these pairings that go well. And that's when their playstyle started suffering a little bit, because they were still doing the same thing. They were still trying in-game to do the same things. But what ended up happening was that they wouldn't really have the same success where someone would face check, or they would be able to hold position, or they'll be able to find people and get big results just because of these pairings. And I felt like as playoffs went on, they kept doing these suboptimal pairings and tried to do something else, or like they tried to do the same thing where they still try to enable lanes to play better in a sense, and still play around around Jojo to be able to do things and enable him around the map. I just felt like they started suffering because this lack of comfort, I guess I would say, and that's why it ties down to my point where I feel like they don't really understand why when they go together it works well. It's not because they're together, it's because they have champions that work well together in that sense. So they will keep doing this, but until they go back to the roots and finding better pairings, or at least, maybe if they still want to play like this, they change their style a little bit to incorporate maybe, a move from their ADC or from Jojo or from a Silent or something, to be able to find this instead of doing this duo, you have this trio of champions that can do something. I don't think it's going to get better. And on the point of Jojo catching flag, I mean, bro, when you walk into the league and you make your whole hype video is 3 minutes of you shitting on everyone in the league and making fun of everyone, and then you go and shit the bed in playoffs, and then Camilo solo kills you.
That's true.
Okay.
Other people just beat the life out of you in playoffs and stuff. I mean, you kind of deserve it, right? And that's fun. As long as he doesn't care about it, it's fun, because I love the fact that he comes in and trash talks, right? But it's always like, if you trash talk and then you suck, then you're gonna get trash talked yourself, But for me, the ultimate baller move is for him to come into Spring and do it again,
right?
And just trash talk again. And I'm like, okay, this guy's a superstar, right? So I think it is difficult a little bit. I think the EU style fits Jojo a little bit better, with the amount of skirmishing, solo queue quality, etc. But it's not easy to move to a new region. As much as culture is not really a culture shock, because it's still it's English speaking. He's from the US, from Canada. It's still a culture shock because people are different, right?
Sure.
In that sense. So it wasn't easy for him. I thought he was fine at first, but then he started, not really having great impact in that sense.
I mean, I will say against KC really have his number. Like Targamas and Yike and Vladi as well, like they know how to really, really punish everything he does in the mid game. It's like the way that they deconstruct like everything. Like whenever he oversteps, they're always there to punish. Whenever he's like not calling for additional resources, whenever he's overcommitting resources, every single time. Like frankly, if I'm on Koi or if I'm Jojo right now, I'm looking at how Koi are exploiting you, because even G2 and Fnatic don't exploit him in the same way that KC are exploiting him. So I agree. I think it's hilarious. I'm 100% sure he's going to trash talk. But the funny thing is, the one that the people that are going to trash talk him the hardest back are KC, because obviously KC call him Vladi's dog, right? That's his nickname amongst the KC fan base. So so we'll have to see going into the next split. But obviously, I'm not going to say I'm not going to be an apologist for him, right? But what I am going to say is, what KC really, really rely on is, as you said, the Illuria Alvaro duo, and they weren't able to execute that properly into Fnatic. I'm not going to say every single draft wasn't that, but for instance, if there's a difference between having Leona Sejuani together, right, versus having a carry plus Nautilus or a carry plus Rel, or or something like this, right? So that's kind of what I would say. That's what I would say about KC. Not about KC, about Koi. But yeah, I mean, it's still the funniest moment of playoffs.
Oh, mate, that's actually amazing as well. It's the fact that you not only type trash talk, you type GG chokers and then fucking choke the game yourself. That's actually amazing. That's just poetic justice, isn't it? It's perfect. I love it.
That's also why.
Yeah, that's why he didn't do the handshake. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then it was the little shove thingy happening. That was
Yeah.
That was spicy, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. No, that was fucking hilarious, mate. And also, like, the funny thing is, even though that was just a random thing that you just brain farted at the end and lost the game, there's actually, like, more serious implications. Like, one thing you have to consider is, because you're in Fearless Draft, you've just wasted your game on draft, bro, where you picked, like, the Yone for fucking Jojo, you've got, like, the fucking Supers Kaiser. Like, you only get these picks one time in the draft. If you fuck up that, that's even more epic that you've done LOL, GG chokers, and then you fucked the game up.
Actually, you know what's even more epic than that? So they said GG chokers, and then they lost. And as their own Nexus is exploding, they say MKOI again says GG chokers.
Oh, right. Okay.
So at least the double down worked. Is like, okay, they own up to it, and just call them chokers again.
That's funny.
As the Nexus is
I'll give
exploding.
him that. That's funny.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
But the sad thing about this is that they go from that game 1 into like Jinx, Azir, Ornn, Sejuani, Leona, right? Yeah, and that's not how, there are teams in this league that could win with that draft, but KOI are not the team that can win with that draft in this league. That's what I would say.
And I'll just say, to make a more serious point, the thing that I think is most underwhelming about KOI isn't even just like the Jojo angle. It's the idea that because they kept 4 of the same players together and they have the same coach, you'd hope they would be the team that'd have like the really strong macro and be shutting everyone down. And, it's teething problems with Jojo. They still also like a bit of a messy team. Like, they're pretty sweet, Peter. I actually think Fearless, they're one of the teams that got exposed by Fearless. Like, they didn't actually have that many comps they look like they could operate.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I think it's fair. But I would say I think that they've always the way that they want to play is really, really scrappy anyway. Like the amount of side lane farm they give up in the mid game is really, really high. But it's just how they want to play the game, right? They want to always like force all the time. They always want to play 2 lanes when, not all the time, but whenever they have a good chance to play 2 lanes, they want to play 2 lanes. So yeah, it's always going to look a bit scrappy, but yeah, I take the point. Yeah.
Right,
no one looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he's the person who logically should be able to, shouldn't he? Like, the joke of it all is, Adam, the one time ever your champion pool could have done something, mate. You weren't in the bloody playoffs. Like, this is the one time that bullshit nonsense you play would have actually made sense in some of these drafts, but you never got to play it, did you? So, somewhat fitting in that sense. Right, what about this then? My point, I made it quite brief because I want to actually open it to you guys mainly, is I'm not a big fan of Fearless anyway, right? But I can understand the idea, like, we're making an extra international tournament. We're going to, like, everyone kept saying, back in the day we used to say spring split doesn't matter. Well, now everyone says winter split doesn't matter and all that crap. So they're trying to figure out a way to make it make sense. So they did this worldwide Fearless one, even though, bizarrely in Europe we just played BO1, so it wasn't Fearless. But you get to the point, we played Fearless eventually, we got a couple of BO5s in. Now we come to this first stand tournament, and you've already basically, because of the patch, no one played this patch to get to this bloody tournament, like, and the whole world qualified in a totally different version of League of Legends almost, and now the tournament comes, and like, doesn't this kind of like throw off a lot of the narrative? Like, how are we supposed to analyze this? What do you think, Odamne? Like, to me, it's like you qualified and it's like if you'd already implemented all the lane swap shit, like, that's going to radically change the game. So what do you think of the fact that the first stand will be on this new patch?
Yeah, I would, outside of lane swaps, not a lot has changed. It's the same. But to be honest, if I think back years, every time before Worlds there would be a bullshit patch that would happen.
True.
That would just that would kind of it would work the same. It would eliminate your argument again, where it's like, you want to keep the same patch or a resemblance of the fact that you've done all of these things in this sort of style, and then you qualify to Worlds. You kind of want to keep it similar. I think they don't really care about this. Just because every time there was Worlds, you had so many. I think out of the last 10 Worlds, there might be 5 or 6 Worlds with broken stuff happening that just got buffed. Systemic changes right before Worlds. Yeah. At the same time, it's hype because you're still forced to adapt. I still don't agree with the lane swap changes. I think at least they're poorly implemented right now. But
I just like that actually says on the screen, like, get out that lane swap detected, get out little. That's just hilarious, and it's stupid.
I mean, all they need is one of those air horns or like the shelter alarms,
exactly.
Like a that's the
siren.
Thing they need to get out of the lane,
Woo, woo. Leave the lane now, leave the lane immediately, peacefully.
Actually, as somebody who doesn't play top lane in solo queue, does it affect support roams top if you're like getting ganked or enemy team is ganking you?
There's this video, I think. The Royal Cannon, I think you must know him because he's like a millionaire. I think he's playing top. And the elite support is coming at like 320 to dive top. It's Renekton Elise versus a Gangplank. Elise auto-attacks the Gangplank one time, Tower one-shot her, and then Tower one-shots the Renekton as well, 900 damage, Tower shot just like that.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I know.
And, okay, well, the thing is, it kills a lot of the things that you could be doing. I mean, I get the spirit of it. Eliminate rain swaps, cool. But it's so jank that even legit strats might just, end up being bad in, like, some cases. Especially now, because what happens is, I saw it in solo queue. My team did like a late invade on top side, and then my support walks through mid lane to run back to his own lane, right? So what happens? Lane swap detected alert. My mid laner is farming the whole 6 minions from the first wave, gets 0 XP and is level 1 with 0 XP.
Okay.
And then the game is completely just doomed. So I think it's still gonna be cool. It's gonna be a cool tournament. I think the reason why they introduced it is also just to try Fearless, because I think Fearless in theory shouldn't really exist because it doesn't make sense from a competitive standpoint. But given the fact that League is fighting with this issue that the pro meta is stale, and you all have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 champions that are completely dominating pro meta for 10 years now, with Azir, Orianna, Ornn, these champions come and go 24/7. Or Cassante, sorry, he was the biggest criminal of pro play. When you don't have a good face for this, then Fearless comes in. And it's exciting just because you get to see different matchups. You don't see the same shit every game. So at least from a viewer perspective, or even from a player perspective, I didn't get to play it, obviously, but I would enjoy it, to be honest. And what better way to test it than, I guess, an international tournament? Because at the same time, everyone was crying that we don't have enough international tournaments. So for me, I don't see it as a bad thing, but I guess it does make Winter Split quite useless. Because at least now, when you win MSI, I think, your team gets an extra seed at Worlds, you get automatically qualified to Worlds. So there's some implications, there's some bonuses. But right now, if you win first stand, then you get like a little handshake, right? And that's it.
Well, I mean, it's funny for us as European fans, but can you imagine the pressure the Chinese and the Korean teams are under right now to sort this shit out before they go to first stand in a week? Because obviously we hope Cape Corp do well. Maybe they can get top. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks KC are going to win this tournament, but we hope that maybe they can go top 2, put up a good fight, get a best of 5 against an Asian team, beat TL, but the pressure on the Chinese and the Korean teams, if you are the team that lets down your region, getting denied the seed at Worlds, it's going to be really rough, right? And especially because it's in Korea, right? So if you are Hanwha Life right now and you fuck it up, it's going to be rough. So I would prefer they didn't do this, but I can foresee as a viewer it will be hilarious when somebody fucks up the new systems and it looks so bad. I can imagine what's the chat.
Since there's no implications for the rest of the year, it feels a little bit like EWC in that sense, where everyone went to EWC and then no one really cared who won or lost in that sense. It felt like a bonus tournament.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I guess kills the hype a little bit about this, just because it doesn't have any big implications for the rest of the year. But it's still hype, right? It's still it's the first international Fearless tournament. So if you get the game 5 between LPL LCK and it goes with banger spicy picks, then it's gonna be super hype, right? It's probably gonna be the most hype series you have in a while, because usually when you go to Worlds and you have game 5, it's like, oh, they're gonna play Cassante and the enemy's gonna take Azir again. But right now, when you go to game 5 between these superstar teams, you're like, I have no idea what they're gonna pick, and I'm super down for it,
Yes. I agree, by the way, as well, because they've played so many best of 5s in the LPL and LCK. They're already under massive pressure anyway. By the way, it's in Korea, for fuck's sake, so everyone's going to be going crazy if Hanwha Life don't win, and they'll all be traitors and the trucks will get called. So the problem is, all these top teams, guys, they need to be able to tune out the noise. So what they could obviously use is Raycon. They could have some Raycon everyday earbuds, which have the active noise cancellation, which allows you to drown out the most maddening of sounds. And obviously, fanboy whining, that would be top of my list. So this is if you want to go to the gym or you're at work or you're doing phone calls, helps with all that jazz. It's easy to just press the button, isolate the sound, press it back on. By the way, if you're listening to a podcast like this, obviously they're wireless. You could be cooking or doing something else, some chore, and then you can pause it if you need to talk to someone, go back on again. The noise cancellation is really good for the gym. They have a 32-hour battery life with multi-point connectivity, so you can plug it into 2 devices at once at the same time, basically. Also, if you haven't charged it, it has a really good quick charge function where just 10 minutes gets you 90 minutes worth of battery. So if you like forget to go out the door and you've still got 5-10 minutes, you can still get enough to like do your travel, commute to work, wherever you go in the library, whatever, PC bang if you're in Korea. And also they have like a million different colours and styles. I'm just a boomer, so I just picked the black one. I just wanted it to just look low-key, stand back. If you want to stand out, they have all the different colours and vibrant ones you could want. And they have a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions asked. So it's on the screen, buyraycon.com/league show, all one word, to get 20% off the best-selling everyday earbuds. Brought to you by Raycon, buyraycon.com/league show. Thank you to Raycon and anyone who purchases this headset. Right, let's get into it. So now we are going to do the last segment of the show, which is the ugly points. So Odamne there. I think we could probably guess there's a team that hasn't been mentioned much yet. What's ugly at the moment in LEC, bro?
Oh man, like even saying it just brings me pain. It's Fnatic, and at this point I'm because I was playing, right? So when I was playing and I would play Fnatic in playoffs and they would shit the bed, I would be like, oh nice, Fnatic shit the bed.
Okay.
But now when I'm on the broadcast side or on the viewer perspective side, and I see it every time, I'm just like, why?
It's just suffering in it.
Why are you griefing again in playoffs? And it's always after G2. It's always a G2 series where they play against G2 and they get shit stomped and then they lose their mind and then they like start fumbling super hard for the rest of playoffs. And I'm like, why? Because you are so good, right? And it doesn't really feel like it doesn't feel like they were good when other teams were shit. They were good, irrelevant of the performance of the other teams. So going into playoffs, it's not. When I look at the game and I try to think, it's not they start playing bad because teams got better. No, they just start playing bad because they play bad, and I don't understand why it always happens with Fnatic because, man, they had great upgrades this year with Upset Mickey. They looked insane.
Yeah.
But I do guess, even talking to Mickey on the desk a couple of times and having snippets a little bit from how it works in the team, apparently their communication system was really bad. A lot of times I would see plays from an analyst perspective. I'm like, wow, you guys are so in sync right here. And then I ask Mickey about it, and he's like, yeah, well, everyone's kind of screaming right now. And I'm telling everyone to just shut up and not do anything and just wait for me.
Okay.
And I'm like, whoa, that sounds nasty, right? Because going into playoffs, I looked at Fnatic and I was saying they're the most complete team. They're the only team that switches draft priority styles to completely different ways of playing. Hard engage, full poke, zone control, neutral objective, strong champions. And they were doing it all, right? Even Snowball in team comms, they had the game where they took all tier 2s by minute 15 and they were taking gold up at minute 15. And I was like, bro, you guys are insane. So they were doing all of this. But then come playoffs, it's always G2, and then it always goes bad. And I think this is, I might be wrong here, but I think this is the story of Fnatic for like the last 3 or 4 years now. In every playoffs, they meet G2 and then they start being bad. And I just don't get it. I don't understand. So for me, that's extremely ugly for me. And for everyone, I think, who's passionate about someone else beating the life out of G2 in the playoffs finally.
For sure.
It's insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously I didn't think Casey was going to win. I thought Casey were going to be good, but I didn't think they were going to win playoffs. So I had my my cart latched to the Fnatic horse, and the Fnatic horse didn't show up, I guess, when the race started. But what I would say is it's weird to me as well because it's almost like teams can't find a way to beat Fnatic, and then G2 like hold their hand, and then they're like, oh, this is how you can beat them, and like BDS did a lot of things to Fnatic that G2 were doing to Fnatic, right? Like in the early game. So I think that maybe it's a little bit on that, but yeah, it's really, really weird. And like to me, Fnatic live and die by Razor, like who I think just in isolation is a top 3 player in the LEC, like over the last few years, right?
Sure.
And he got out jungled by 113. In the early game, he got outjungled by SkewMond. He was mixed against Illuria, and then he got outjungled by Yike, right? So yeah, it was, and who did they play in the first round? Oh, they played Heretics in the first round. So yeah, that wasn't the hardest assignment for a jungler, right? So yeah, it's I don't know whether if the comms are really chaotic, then maybe that's a bit on Razork. But for me, it looked like they just forgot how to play early game, and maybe Razork is just under so much pressure to hold the early game together that, you know, when he's being targeted, it's harder for him to do that, right? And that's the only thing I can think of, because it doesn't make sense how you can get so bad so quickly out of nowhere. It's not like the patch was massively changed. It was just really Jace, right?
Yeah, it was just Jace, and they weren't really a big benefactor. But
Yeah.
also from my perspective as well, I think Razork is the best jungler in Europe. But now that I'm thinking about regular season, maybe he got away with way too many Vi games where it's just so easy to play when you just play Vi and you press R. But I also think from what I know, there's a bit of unlucky timing, because I think going into playoffs, I think Upset got sick.
I think he was ill the whole playoffs. They just didn't mention it much. I think he had like a flu or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I look at Fnatic, the engine or the guy who yaps, who's the chief yapper in that team, is Upset. So when your main source of shot calling and by yapper I mean it's not really shot calling, but I feel like a lot of teams benefit a lot from having someone who casts their own game, in that sense, where it's like literally saying out loud what he's doing and what he wants to do permanently, right? It's not like, oh, hey guys, play for this tower. He's like, oh, I have push here, I want to play for this, I want to move, okay, hey, let's look to move here. Just constantly yapping, right? Just constant stream of information that it's easy for everyone to follow. And I think once that information or like that stream of that flow got cut off by him getting sick, I think that's when Fnatic started struggling a little bit, because I guess more burden of responsibility came on perhaps Razork. Obviously, this is all speculation, right? Or Razork, Mickey, Humanoid, the other people who are involved in like the mid-bot side of the map. So I think maybe it was just unfortunate for this time, but I don't know. It was 3 weeks of them having uninspiring games. So I'm like, how sick can you be, right? You're sick, but you're not dying. You know, you're fine. You're not. You can still talk, or the team can still adapt, right? So that's why I'm really not sure how to rate them or think about them, because they do bounce back, but they bounce back in regular season. And then tradition always says that in playoffs they're going to be bad again. So I'm like, okay, is this a one-off? Because the roster is really, really good on paper, super talented. I still feel like they should have won the LEC this year if they kept their form as they had in regular season. But I don't know how to look at them going forward, because I guess this is the first time when you're disappointed as a fan, at least for me, where I'm like, oh wow, this team is really good, and then you shit the bed, and you're like, well, this is the first time you're heartbroken, you know. And it's weird. It's weird.
Yep. I don't even have anyone to point to be honest. Like last year, I could point to Noah and Jun. Like, but this year, I just don't have anybody. It's just like they were worse as a 5.
Yeah, it's hard. There's no scapegoat, and it sucks, you know.
Somebody has to stand up and be the scapegoat.
I mean, the joke is in the past, because of names, people would say Oscar, but he actually was really good in the playoffs. Like, I can't even blame him, can he? He's actually probably one of the best pieces in the team. No, by the way, I know what you mean, Odo, because here's what's funny. Just because in the past, like either friends of mine or I've just preferred the G2 style of play, for example. I used to think it was hilarious when Fnatic would have the playoff collapse. Like, lol, wait for game 5. But I'll tell you what actually made me hate Fnatic, which is when I started doing betting, because, bro, you would always get these like crazy underdog odds for them against like G2, and you'd go, bro, it's like a 50-50 though. Come on, they could win this. And mate, the amount of times now I've just been held like, well, that's why it was the underdog odds. Turns out the betting company knows better than me what the fucking odds should be. And I've lost again. And I've lost again in game 5. Like, that's happened 1 million times now, the last like 2 years. Happens every time at Worlds. They always go to game 3 in the best of 3 against every Asian team as well. Like, it's a fucking nightmare, mate. They almost always beat somebody. Oh, we almost beat top 8. You didn't, but you almost did. Which, by the way, spoiler, there is no almost fucking payout in betting, is there? You actually have to win the game. I don't get like 90% of the money because you almost did in it. I get none of it. I get fucking none. So I now do hate them as well. I've actually had the actual Fnatic fan experience now where you're pulling for them, where you're like, it's possible they can do it this time. It's going to be a different day than they're just fucking up. Because I'm with you as well. The reference, and sadly, I don't know if you'll have this in Romania, but there's a classic cartoon, the one that has Snoopy in, called Peanuts, right? And one of the most famous stories in this Odamne is there's this character called Charlie Brown, who's just like sort of like a, guy who just tries to go through life, but he's just really unlucky, right? And in it, there's this character called Lucy, who's this girl who always tricks him into trying to kick this American football, right? She holds it, like when the players holds it to kick the field goal. And then the idea is every time he goes to kick it, last second, she just pulls it out the way, so he just kicks and falls on his arse, right? But the joke is, because he's just like a really sort of like, just a normal person who's not like very Machiavellian, he's just like a normal bloke, he falls for every time. Like every time he thinks like, oh, this is the one time she's not going to move it like last second, so I can just run up and kick it, And the point is, you have to like, to actually kick it, you have to believe it's going to be there. You have to put all your energy, it's going to work this time. That's what Fnatic's like. That's what fucking supporting Fnatic's like. Every time you convince yourself it's going to be better, and it isn't better. And also, I'll give you two other things. Another reason why this is hilarious is because, bro, they still had Razork and Humanoid. Last time someone else beat G2 and it wasn't them, that was when Rogue did it. So it's not even like G2 wins every single time. Now Karmine Corp and Rogue are beating them, but you just have to watch because you're stupid Fnatic and you always come fucking third and have to watch them win. And you can't even use the excuse, no one can beat G2. They can, just not you. You can't ever do it for some reason. So that just sucks. And then lastly, I've got like a real point, which is, I do also think if you look, right, by the end, I would normally flame the coaches, say like, why are you putting Razork on this pick? Like, what the fuck? MF in game 5. At this point, I'm just going to say, I think the players are picking some of these picks, boys. I don't think the coaches are making them play these drafts. Like, I think at the end, they just run out of champions, mate, and they just go for like weird comfort shit that like doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I have no idea. So I'll just say this. Here's where, though, this is where I am a true Fnatic fan now, because watch. Corpium. Yeah, but next split, it's 2v2 lanes, boys. There's no more lane swaps, boys. It's all good. Next split, we've got Mickey and Upset. We're just going to win the whole thing. I'm doubling down again. We're back on the Fnatic hype train. There you go. I'm back. Are
you telling me you're not a fan of Game 5 Lulu Misfortune Volibear drafts?
I wasn't feeling that draft, mate. The Volibear one killed me as well. It's like, why is this even in the game? What are we doing?
Yeah, on the point of drafting, it's mostly coach who would keep suggesting picks at all times. Unless the player is freaking out and he feels like if something doesn't get picked there, then you lose the game. That's usually when the player vetoes. So, for example, in that MF scenario, I feel like that's maybe one of the times where it happened, where you're like, oh, well, enemy has, what did they have? They have Jarvan and Aurora, I think.
Yeah.
And then you feel like if you don't pick, it feels like no matter what you play, you're gonna die. So you're like, right. Oh well, I need to pick this, but even though it really doesn't make sense. And at the same time, it's like, I don't know. The thing is, the player on stage, you're gonna freak the fuck out because you have to play, right? And all of your brain power is gonna go into, seeing what's ahead of you and how you have to navigate and play your champion and all of this. The thing is, if you're a coach, that's kind of your job is to be prepped for this scenario. Because realistically, as a coach, what are you gonna do? You're gonna have to stress for 5 minutes to make the draft on stage be pixel perfect, and then you're vibing on your chair for 40 minutes while the game is going, right? So you're not really doing much, and you're doing maybe some adaptations where you like try to identify problems so you can adapt for the next draft. But the player is stressed for that whole time, so that's why I'm like, I feel like you can't really afford to use a lot of brain power as a player in the draft, unless obviously you have, a spark of genius where you feel like, oh, if we pick this champion or if I don't pick this champion, then the draft is lost. But that's why I'm like, most of the time I feel like it's the coaches who pick or decide the draft because you have all of this time in the game before to cook something, right?
I agree with you, but I think it's on the day. Either the coach has to have the final say, or there has to be a player on the team who has the final say. Because you can also do it that way, right? But like where the coach can suggest an idea and then the player has the final veto. But it doesn't even have to be, for what kind of thing. I will say though, players may be stressed in the game, but like when you guys are watching backstage, a disaster about to happen. When you see your mid laner about to face check into a bush with 3 people in, that's pretty stressful. I will say that. Glad I don't have to do that one anymore for sure.
Yeah, but my point was that for example, as a player, I feel like there's plenty of opportunities, especially in Fearless now, because it's a lot harder to properly have a good grasp on the situation of what is OP, what is open, what you can get countered with. Maybe before it was easier because it was kind of like the same draft every game. But I think going into game 5, I feel like as a player, I think you just don't have enough brain power to properly assess the situation in a draft, especially in the later stages, game 4, game 5, to be like, to have this clear sight or like this clairvoyance or this clear sight of being able to, properly identify what is super OP or what is not, unless, I mean, sure, you can do it every once in a while, but I feel like the norm is a lot harder on the player to have, for example, final veto in that sense. But that's why I'm curious how teams are also doing it right now with this, if they still have the same system, because that's what it looks like to me happened in game 5 Fnatic, where MF was picked. It feels like obviously speculation, but it feels like someone freaked out somewhere there, because otherwise it makes no sense to pick it like that,
No, it makes sense.
Right, what is your ugly point, Peter?
So my ugly points, we've glazed KC, we've talked about G2, Fnatic, and KOI. So let's go and talk about the rest of the league. Okay. So my ugly point is Nisqy is going to be the new support for Vitality, which is a banger, I will say. Like obviously, I have Mac is my boy. Like I have his back, but it's definitely a fun one. What I will say is let's say about this. Okay, so the tragedy for Vitality is that their support last split was Stend, who looked LEC ready, and in fact is LEC ready. He's been one of the shining lights on Heretics, right? So they gave up Stend between splits. So the decision to drop Hylissang must have come either from the off season or from this split, right? Or a combination of. So it's a decision that has only been made in the last 3 months. It's unfortunate for Vitality, what I would say is, and also their support in Academy is from Turkey, and Turkish visas, you just can't get Turkish. Like it's not possible. Okay, so they need to find somebody. So they have a potential future LEC support in their Academy who they can't get a visa for. They've said that they're building their team around Hylissang, and then they have to drop him. And to me, it feels rough. I mean, I understand why they're making the decision. Like Hylissang, like it got to the, at the start of the split where we had this good, bad, ugly thing. I think week 1 I said Hylissang was bad. Week 2 I said it was ugly, and then I think week 3 and week 4 I just didn't even want to talk about it anymore. Right? It was just, it wasn't even like ugly anymore. So I get why they're doing it. I can see why Nisqy might be a good fit. To be fair, he's a really good Gragas player. He's a really good Annie player. He's a really good Nautilus player. I think he plays Galio. It's been a long time since I've seen him play Galio. So he can definitely play these engaged supports, right? It's not like whether he can play range supports, we'll see. But it's definitely an interesting pick. But it's holy moly, like the thing. So I'm scared. So firstly, role swap support kind of difficult, but I think Nisqy has the qualities. My issue is that this is a guy that could potentially play mid lane for, he's good enough to play mid lane at LEC level, and that may pressure Zayak a bit, who I think has struggled a bit with nerves over his career, but actually had a pretty decent split. He wasn't perfect, but he had a decent split last split. So I'm worried that may impact him a little bit. I hope it doesn't, because I think he has potential. But yeah, it's very, very unfortunate it has to play out this way, because I could imagine how insane this Vitality team would be if they had Stend. But I'm really excited to see Nisqy do it, because I think that he could be good. But wasn't Nisqy like a co-streamer for KC or somebody? So he's giving up French co-streaming to come back and play for Vitality.
Yeah, but it's like Odo said on Twitter, that Vladi's here now, mate. You're not getting mid lane, so at this point you've got to fucking role swap, right? Yeah, what a choice we got.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, when you're sitting there waiting for. I feel like he was literally sitting there waiting for, planting the seeds over there for like someone to fuck it up, and Vladi be like, oh hey, Kameto, here I am. I was here. I was supporting you the whole time. I was part of your team, and now it's like, okay, well. Later, Vlad is the GOAT, So it is a very dank timeline we live in, where Nisqy, out of all of people, is support. So So for me, it's insane. I'm still waiting for the moment for him to like miss flash WQ on Alistar or something and looks like a clown, because that's I mean it's on brand with Nisqy, right? Every time he fails, you need to make fun of him, because that's just how his image is.
Yeah.
I see it working because I don't know. I don't feel like support is the most mechanically intensive champions in that sense. I feel like the skill expression is a little bit higher on mid lane. So most of the combos or the clicks that you do are a little bit harder to execute on mid. The only thing that he needs is a lot of matchup knowledge, especially now that lane stops are gone. He was always a smart player when it comes to map movements and stuff like this. But given the fact that he's playing with Karzi, and Karzi is a guy that wants to win lane because he's good, now it's a challenge for him to get up to speed on, pretty much everything. Because now I think there's also a meme that Nisqy started playing support on his main account and he dropped like 400 LP in like 3 days, right?
Okay.
So he's kind of losing games. I mean, I didn't see it, but that's why I saw a tweet about it. And I'm like, I was too lazy to go check to see if it's actually true or not. And if it's not, then yeah, well, my bad, I guess. But still, yeah, it is rough to get up to speed, because now there's like 3 weeks until ADC starts again, and he needs to learn all of the matchups and all of this. But also on Peter's point, I think it would be absolute lunacy if he goes support and then the next split he's replacing Chaik on mid as the mid laner, and I'm like, bro, you guys are cooking way too hard. So I'm hopeful that doesn't happen, right? Because it's straight from a soap opera, it's a bit too much for me. But it is weird. I guess there's just no good support. I feel like there's been a support route for a little while now. And it's unfortunate. It's flashy, right? That is Vitality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But because the thing is, even in GX, we tried to get Parus one time between the splits, and it's like, if you want to get a player from Turkey to get him a work visa, it takes at least 3-4 weeks or even more.
Right.
That's the minimum, right? So even if they do it right now or 2 days ago, LEC starts in 3 weeks.
Yep.
So are you gonna gamble that the visa is there on time with bureaucracy and everything? He's not gonna be there to stay with you to scrim in the office. Your infrastructure and everything is a little bit messed up because you have to do everything online. So it's just a gamble, because you might be putting all of these eggs in the basket, and then all of a sudden his visa's not there, and then you just sacrifice another split, right?
Yep.
So it's a little bit unfortunate that their main backup, I guess, which was Flashy, which I think probably deserves to be in LEC because I think he's good, can't do it because of visa. But I guess outside of that, there's just nothing left in that sense. So it does suck.
I mean, I will say Kaiser is smurfing right now for Heretics Academy.
Okay.
Like, I mean, he's really smurfing.
Okay.
But what I will say is that
Roma's still out there, is he? Shadow, is he even playing fucking hell, bro?
Shadow.
Peter, I told you it's hard to beat the washed allegations. No matter how much you smurf, once someone labeled you as washed, it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, what I will say is that I think that there are role swaps that have worked in the past. Nisqy, if you were to say, name a mid laner that could role swap well to support, Nisqy would be
He should be on the top of the list.
there. Yeah, he should be either at the top of the list or near the top of the list. I think people want to clown on Vitality a bit too much, because sure, it's not ideal, but I don't think it's doomed to failure, and I don't think like Nisqy is doomed to be a bad support, but it's definitely ugly. That's what I will say. Because Stead would have been a really good pick. But anyway, I just we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
But yeah, the last split was Vitality looked very close last split, and I would say that they've gambled a lot. They gambled on Sayak, they gambled on Nak. And those gambles have paid off, right? I mean, both Sayak and Naknako looked like they belong in LEC, and Naknako especially looked like he was actually a very good top laner. Maybe not in lane, but his team fighting was really good for sure. So they're close. Maybe this is what they need, but we'll see. Like, I hope it works out for them.
I do think it's hilarious how like the narratives work on this one though, because like first of all, like I actually thought your tweet was fucking hilarious, Peter, where you basically just said like that eventually it just got boring to even talk about how bad Hylissang was. You just didn't even do it. Because first of all, that's hilarious that you would even have that take, and then secondly, I actually wasn't aware that was an option, Peter. What I do is I do weekly shorts and just keep banging on the same people every week when they fuck up, and you go, well, good news, we're eating good again. T1 lost or whatever. You know, that's how it works in the content world, mate. We never get bored of hating on people for doing a bad flash. And by the way, that is also why it's so perfect that of all the people, it's Nisqy replacing Hylissang. Because in the last few years, I'm with you, Odo, they actually do, like, Nisqy became one of the most clowned on players ever because he does do that thing where, just like Hylissang, he'll do, like, the game-winning play, and then 1 minute later, he'll do the game-losing play. And you're like, holy fuck, what have you done? And it's just it's the one that, to a casual fan, it's just obvious when you do a flash in and you're on your own and you just get blown up instantly. And that's just the most obvious fuck-up in the game. It's the equivalent of football, of, like, scoring an own goal. Like that, even the pleb's gonna go, what the fuck? You're not supposed to do that. And there's no intellectual way around it. It's why, as we've talked about on past episodes, mate, this is the actual secret Peter Dun teaches as a coach, Odo, isn't even like drafting, development players. It's how you like make excuses for players who are just in the game. He's world class at that, mate. His whole coaching lineage. I thought Mac was just good at it, bro. The pad guy, he was doing some miracle shit last year, bro. He was trying to explain about how like if he was basically, his logic almost was, Odo, even in like 2024 when Hylissang does an insane in, maybe we just can't see like the genius of it, you know, and we have to create more space, even more space for him. Even though my joke would be like, how much more space does this fucking guy want? Is what Elon Musk to come in? He's going 2 screens over when his whole team's over it and just dying in like the fog of war. So I do love that aspect because they tried that. Like the one thing Hylissang can never say is that people didn't have his back in Vitality, mate. They went to the limit for this guy. They even had the times of Mad Lions when they were the coaches and he was still inting. And by the way, here's the genius of this move, Peter. It's one of the only ways as Mac and Pad that you could ever betray your own faith in Hylissang, because you've done it with one of your other problems, Nisqy. You brought in literally the Nisqy from Mad Lions that gets you in all the international tournaments and then hits the shit out of them. And you've replaced Hylissang with that player. So you've already got like another player that you've got a soft spot for who's possible enter. But I am with you though, to bring it all the way back. Like, what's funny is this just shows you how people's careers almost do follow like a fucking script. So you know everyone said that Nisqy's whole shit is he's like the fucking Doinby of mid lane or what in like Europe or whatever, or he's a bit like High when he used to play in Cloud9 and he was the supportive guy with the joke. The joke is those are also the players you'd want to swap to fucking support if you wanted them to still stay in the game and have shot calling presence and make players on the map. That's it. They're exactly. It's why also I think before he went top lane, people wanted Perks to swap to this spot. Anyone who has a history of like they actually have like more going on than just hands, you wanted them to potentially swap to support. So I don't hate the move. I do think it's hilarious though, because like people have gone too far the other way on the Nisqy one now. Now they're actually memeing like he's actually just shit at the game. Like he's obviously not. Like he could make some really good fucking plays, and he does have the signature champion. Some of you guys mentioned that he was really good on Gragas mid lane. He was like probably one of the best ever in LEC. But I agree, he did become a meme at the end. It's also just perfect because like, bro, what is even... I also just think, like, when you do have those rookie solo laners, what do they even think when they walk in a team and Hylissang's just there, bro? What happens to their brains? What do they think laning phase is like? Go on, Peter, what are you going to say?
Yeah. I mean, I will say we got a banger Jack Troll tweet out of it, which is that I can't remember what Jack Troll was saying. He was like saying that, I saw lots of complaints about Nisqy getting the chance to roll swap, but like all you ERL supports are like complete trash. And you don't
shit, right? Yeah. Okay.
Let me find the exact.
So you just used it to donk on everyone else. Okay, fair enough. That's
let me find the. It looks dreadful for the scene when it's just enough for a big name to roll swap and get a support in LEC, but there is no ERL support currently that doesn't suck a big fat one. You guys have no hands nor the ability to lead the team as a leader, which this role requires.
It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. Okay, fair enough. He's going hard.
I mean, it is true. I mean, when I look at ERL supports, there's no one that comes to mind that as being super talented. But even Alvaro, I think back when he started with when he was MDK and then the whole thing happened where everyone from the EU Masters team got promoted to the LEC team. I didn't really think of him that he was gonna be like that good, you know. But then he shut me up. He played really, really well in LEC, and then he developed. I just feel like the barrier of entry is there's this artificial barrier of entry where people expect you to be the GOAT when you come into the LEC, otherwise you don't deserve your spot. But at the same time, I feel like you would improve a lot by coming to LEC and having access to the whole infrastructure and everything. So I'm a bit torn on that because I agree a little bit with Jack Troll where I think about the supports in ERLs, and I can't really think of a really good one, right? There's no obvious imposter over there that would deserve to be in LEC in my book. So I don't know. It's a little bit. I mean, that's what scouts are there for, right? You do your little supercomputer, you run it, and then you get some stats. But I guess on support, it's hard to do the supercomputer because you can't really track on how many words someone did. You know, as if it's a good metric. But on the topic of Hylissang Inting, I'm just saying, if I would have done any of the ints he did, people would have told me to retire a long time ago.
Sure.
So I'm just saying. It's funny how narratives work, because for him, the narrative of making space stuck really early. So everyone's like, okay, he's making space. Yes. But if I do the same, this guy's just griefing, get him out instantly, you know?
No, I'll give you the analogy. The analogy is, if you have like a film director that's done some really like amazing, he's won the Oscar and everyone like praised one of their films, they could make a film that's really like artistic and all weird imagery. And what people will do is they'll go, I don't want to seem like I'm stupid. So they're probably doing something really smart here. They're like, I get it. Yeah. He's doing something really clever with what he was doing with his symbology there. But if that was like a movie from a director you'd never seen, you'd go, what's this bollocks? It's just a bunch of random shit. He's just trying to be pretentious or something. It's the same as that, mate. Like, I actually do think if you're Hylissang, you have to rethink your career if you ever want to play again, because this one coaching staff went to the absolute limit. Like, they give you years, mate. And also, more importantly, like, that's as far as it can go with the excuses. Like, eventually you have to actually just fucking play good. You can't just still be like, but 3 years ago this was the most genius move. Like, that can't still be a thing years later. Come on. Because it's not like the results are there. If they were making finals, you'd be hard to complain. Like when they did win that one Mad Lions split, I think everyone gave them a little bit of a break. But, bro, you can't just be like a relevant playoff team and then also have all these crazy ints. Like, that's why everyone's memeing it. I don't even hate this gamble, mate. I think you have to do something. It's hard to just go with the same bot lane in his next split, right?
And, I mean, I think the difficulty is it went from being like 60-40 favorable to like 28, like 80 to be fair. Like, because I mean, he did have a couple of player of the games. I mean, I know there's a fan votes, but like, it's not like he was completely useless for the entire split. It's just that he had a lot of very rough games. I think is the way to say that. Like a lot of very rough games.
Sure. Right, what about the last point of the show is going to be mine. I'm going to get, because this is the ugly one, I wanted to frame this one narratively and I want to get your take. One thing I find really weird, I've talked about on past episodes, Peter, is I hate when you get what you call narrative whiplash. Like the narrative's going this way and suddenly people just 180 and it's like you're in a car crash, like fucking what the hell, that's too quick. Like there's no fucking space between the narratives. So here's what sucks, right? The entire split, this was the narrative about G2. The narrative was, when they made their upgrades, the fuck up was taking out Mickey X some support. SkewMond's fine. SkewMond was awesome the whole split. People were saying he was looking really good. He integrated well. You can see why he was the one that was picked up. Obviously in BDS, everyone thought he was amazing. The whole narrative, the whole split was, is Labrov actually better than Mickey? And if Fnatic wins, didn't G2 fuck up? They kicked Mickey. They should never let Mickey go. But because at the very end, even though I didn't see anyone who had Karmine Corp winning this final before the final, by the way. I looked online for loads of it. I didn't see anyone. And I can tell you, even if people know scrim shit, they always say it usually like, I think there's better chance than you realise. Instead, everyone was just like, I hope it's a good final. Now the narrative after the final, even though I'm with you, I thought Yike had a really good split. The narrative now is the opposite. It's like, no, actually, the Labrov Mickey one was fine. Forget about that. What would they do in taking out Yike? SkewMond, because listen, he did have a bad final. He missed like every bloody smite he probably could, but he's also a rookie jungler playing his first ever big split final, etc. So I feel like the narrative just snapped too hard for me. Like I can give it that, like maybe Yike was better overall and in the final, blah, blah, blah. You can do all that, but I feel like now people are just going to rewrite history that like it was a bad pickup for SkewMond or something. Because there's another thing about G2 is, they looked whack in that final, but it's not like I'm just bailing on them now. They could win the next fucking split. They could be the best team again for all we know. So where are you guys at on this narrative, this like jungle one of like, now they shouldn't have kicked Yike? What do you think of that, Odo? What's your angle on this?
I think G2 was having a big issue in the sense where their team last year failed, but you don't really have a clear scapegoat, or like scapegoat in the sense where a clear weak link where you're like, okay, this is the upgrade that we're gonna do that is gonna elevate our team, right? And from what I know is that the gamble that they took was, yeah, maybe in time, if we change jungle, given how our jungler is currently, integrated in our roster, if we change to someone else, then in the long run, we're gonna get the results that we wanted to have with Yike. Because for me, when the move happened, what was bizarre, or what I felt like was happening, was that they're repeating history by getting Yike, or getting like Yike 2.0, which is SkewMond, kind of the same trajectory, best jungler in LFL, stomping the league, and now it felt like they're flipping the coin again, because maybe
Right.
this time it's gonna land again. And I was up for it, right? I was sure this can work. I don't think it's gonna work in the first bit. I thought Yike was still gonna be better
Right.
in the immediate future. But maybe in the long run, given the systems, and obviously they know the identity that the team wants to have and how the players would work together best, felt like it would work then. It's just SkewMond popped off a little bit early, and Yike played to his usual really, really good level. So I think that's why the narratives are getting mixed there, because there was no clear good replacement option for G2, because it's the same. When you have the roster with Yike and Miki, you look at every role and you're like, well, I have no one to kick,
Yeah,
because there's no
true.
one else better to get.
Yeah.
So anything you do or anyone you take will be put under scrutiny in that sense.
Yes.
For me, the big one, or the one that I felt like had no excuse, was Miki for Labrov, in the sense where I could understand the narrative behind SkewMond being better than Yike in the long run. But I didn't really understand the one with Labrov being better than Miki in the long run, because it felt like you have the same profile player. But I felt like Miki was a little bit more diverse in his champion pool, because even last year when I was on the desk in summer, we had this funny stat about Labrov. He was 8-1 on Rel, and BDS kept getting Rel, so they're winning every single game because he was getting Rel. But then his win rate on other champions was sub 30%, right? So it's just, he was getting his stats super inflated by playing his best champion. It's like me getting Rumble or Cannon every single game, and enemy doesn't take exhaust, so I'm just like 1v5ing every game because it feels super OP because it's my best champions, right? So I felt like he was getting his best champions at all the times, and he was never getting like checked on playing on other stuff, or at least exposed in LEC. So for me, when I saw that move for G2, that was the one for me that I really didn't understand, because I just didn't see the evidence or the growth or the perspective, where I'm like, sure, you don't want Mickey on your team because he ends some games, but 80% of the time he's gonna smurf those games, and 20% he's gonna end those games. But are you gonna change him for someone that is gonna win you more games than Mickey did? He's like, Lavrov is probably gonna lose you less games than Mickey did, but I'm not sure if he's gonna win you more games than
Yeah.
Mickey
I see
did
what
in
you mean.
that
He
sense.
doesn't make the game winning play, right? Sure.
Yeah, so it felt like they were stopping the bleeding on bot lane. They were like, okay, well, the issue is that Mickey is hinting sometimes, so we're gonna get someone who doesn't hint. But for me, that one was the one where I was a hater, not so much about the scheme on the eye, because I was like, okay, that's just a flip, right?
Sure. I mean, I think also changing jungle support, like bringing in a rookie support and rookie jungler, and putting in a new support who's not used to the rest of the team is gonna impact you a lot. I think that yeah, I mean, the SkewMond thing, I agree with what Odo says about that. I think that Labrov, so it felt to me this offseason that they wanted to sign Paris and SkewMond together. And then they decided that they were going to drop Mickey. And then once they couldn't get Paris, they decided that they wanted Labrov. That's what it felt like happening, because it would have made more sense if they brought in the BDS Academy jungle support duo together, and tried to fit that in. But I do agree that it's that there is a bit of narrative whiplash. I think that's a little bit on SkewMond actually for getting to that level so quickly. So credit for him for that. But I will say, I like Labrov. I don't think they should have replaced him. Like I've said in past episodes, like I know from talking to Chinese coaches that the only person, well, the second most studied LEC player from Chinese coaches is Mickey, right? After Caps, right? Because they look at he does interesting things with ward patterns. He has it's mainly about warding and positioning around neutrals and things. They actually, he's one of the people that I know that are studied. So that's what I would say. That's what I would say for Mickey. I would also say Labrov had a rough finals. He was really good in the upper bracket final. He was like maybe the best player in the series, when he got to play Blitzcrank into Lulu and things like this. But in the finals, he had a lot of times where he was just going in or going in without the support of his team, or getting caught out of position and things like this. So it was a bit rough. I'll be honest, for Labrov. But yeah, my main issue is that they chose to change both of them. Like, I think they could have kept Yike and brought in a rookie support if that's like, let's say they really, really hate Mickey for. I mean, Mickey, as far as I can tell, is like one of the nicest people imaginable. But let's say they decide that they don't want Mickey no matter what, then I think they should have kept Yike and just brought in somebody else in support, but not change both of them.
Yeah, that's the problem. I agree with that. I didn't think of that one. I mean, I thought of it before, but I didn't think of it right now as a critical move. I do think when you change support and jungle together at the same time, it will show, because they're the main characters of the game in that sense. They will give the identity, they're the engine of the team, etc., etc. And it did show, to be honest, because G2 were bad for like the first 2 weeks, right? But then they found a good draft band-aid for week 3, and then the draft seemed to solidify itself in week 4 and 5. But in the last, there is one more week. In the last week with the finals, everything just fell apart again. And it was just, again, the G2 from week 1. So I still think it's growing pains. I did think, honestly, that they overperformed in the sense where they made finals after changing support in jungle. I think it's really, really hard. And that's credit to, everyone involved in that sense, to BB Caps and everyone who stayed there as the core, because they can carry a completely new system in that sense. But now it's like, what are they going to do? How are they going to perform in the coming splits? Are they going to be able to fix these problems or not? Because arguably now they do have the time to get all of this sorted out. But will they? Because I'm more inclined to believe that no. In that sense, at least with maybe the growth of support in that sense. I do think they're going to find identity. I do think SkewMond and Labrov are going to work really good. I just don't know that in the long run, Labrov is going to be better than Mickey.